Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Kuchera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome in. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, the podcast series, as we close in on the week. Thursday, today, we are going to talk about Wells Fargo in more trouble. Most of you may have seen that in the headlines in terms of the pipeline. Seattle's cutting some ties with them and much, much more going on. So we'll bring that up to date on that. And also the CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, has fined Prospect Mortgage and a couple others in our industry. Going to keep you posted on that as well. Just a reminder before we get started, if you need any assistance in the way of purchase financing, if you need to refinance, you have any questions on residential finance, I'm here to help you with that. You could reach me at 408-838-9060, or you could always go to reradiolive.com. All right, the first part of the show, going to talk a little bit about Wells Fargo back in trouble. Most of you may or may not have heard. Several months ago, I think it was about mid to late 2016, Wells Fargo got seriously fined and came under a lot of scrutiny and trouble because their employees, internal employees, were compensated for opening up as many accounts as possible. And I'll summarize it and kind of truncate it for sake of time. But basically, they were compensating employees for opening up new accounts, checking accounts, credit card accounts, savings accounts, those types of things. Each time they opened a certain accounts, they hit quotas, they made more bonuses. Well, what happened, it got running rampant, and there was, I think it was well over 200,000, if I'm not mistaken, people that had accounts opened without their authorization. So what employees were doing to get compensated, they were opening accounts, but it got out of control, and they were opening accounts without people's authorization. They were going into their current accounts, existing accounts, and adding a checking account, a savings account, or credit card account, and just adding them so that they would get credit for their bonuses, which is a big, big, big problem. And so they were caught, fined, and under scrutiny. The president actually finally resigned, which he should have. They knew full well what was going on, and they tried to keep it from the public, and eventually, and certainly it always gets out. So that was a big deal, and they're still kind of reeling from that problem. And then here we are into the beginning part of 2017, and now Wells Fargo is completely tied to the Dakota Access pipeline, and so they're involved with that. And much of Seattle is trying to cut ties with Wells Fargo in general. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with fraudulent activity, but the reason I bring it up is because they are a big company. They're one of the biggest mortgage lenders in the United States, and they do a lot of financing, and along with the good, you also have to take when the not-so-good comes along, and Wells Fargo has done really well for several decades. But sometimes when you get too big, it's hard to manage, and it appears that they're having more and more troubles with these things. It's cost them a lot more business, and it's causing cities like Seattle and others possibly to withdraw any kind of business or existence with them, which is interesting to see how this really comes together over the next couple of months. In addition to what's happened is the lack of trust. We all know that with a company this size, when you experience something that happened internally, which was bad enough, and I think the biggest frustration for the general consumer has been for years, and the great part about social media and speaking out is people have a voice now more than ever, was that the CEO of Wells Fargo left with hundreds of millions of dollars, and the senior vice president that developed the program, that designed, was the architect of the program to compensate these employees, left with, if I'm not mistaken, about $140 to $150 million too. So there's no there is really no negative repercussions with these people in terms of lifestyle, compensation. They leave. Someone might say, well, it's on their record and they have a reputation. Well, not really. Someone else is going to hire them, I could tell you, in the business world, and you certainly don't have to care about their financial situation, because they are never going to have to worry about money the rest of their lives. And I think so, not speaking for people, but in essence, what most people would tell you, the frustration comes from all these, I think it was over 2,000, maybe 2,500 employees that were fired for these very activities. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't have been fired, or maybe some of them shouldn't have been fired. I think what upsets most people is that there should have been a chain reaction and an effect back upwards of the president all the way up the road, and this other person not only getting fired, but fired without any compensation. Now, I know it's a lot more difficult than that, because if you have compensation plans, you have to live by them. But there should be a clause, there really should be a clause in these contracts when someone with a publicly traded company knowingly is a part of misleading consumers, basically stealing from consumers and using their information unauthorized. They should not be compensated for whatever their contract is with that company. I don't know how many millions of dollars, but the biggest part is, I don't know that, I think the part that's, there's two sides of this. So the first part is that some might say, well, Joe, yeah, this is a terrible thing that happened. It shouldn't have happened. It's really, it's uncalled for, blah, blah, blah. However, no one really suffered any financial distress or pain. So what someone's on one side of the aisle would say, this was terrible, but no one really, in other words, someone didn't lose $100,000 or $300,000, or there wasn't large amounts of money that people lost. That is true from my understanding. So that's one side. The other side of the argument is that, yeah, people didn't lose money where it's going to affect their life and be devastating to their life. But what they did was that they went into people's personal accounts unauthorized, opened accounts, which included, of course, their Social Security number, private information, account numbers, all those types of things, personal information. That's an invasion of privacy. And how do we not know that employees didn't steal information and sell it to someone with their personal information? I'm not suggesting that happened, but how do we know that that didn't happen? And so this is the part that frustrates people. Now, it's one thing if your security systems aren't as good as they should be, or someone fraudulently gets into the back end of your technology and basically hacks your system, right? We know a lot about that. So if your system was hacked and as a company you did everything you could to protect that system, you could prove that you spent all the amount of money to have the firewalls and the protection in place so that hacks wouldn't happen, and someone gets in and hacks the information and happens to steal personal information. That's not right, but that's a totally different conversation here. Completely different. You as a company did not endorse a program that advocated people to go in and open fraudulent accounts for compensation. That's completely different than someone coming in, hacking your system and stealing information. We don't like either one, but one was known by the company that this was going on, and they try to keep it under the wraps. and also, this program is created, and the excitement around making more money for these employees got out of control, and it wasn't supervised, obviously, by senior management. And for that, that's wrong, and that shouldn't have taken place. Now, what's happened here is people have revolted, and I think the wonderful thing, again, I'll say about, there's some negative sides of social media and all the things that come along with it. However, the good side of social media is that people get information out quickly, and they can express their opinions, which we're all free to express, And in this case, people speak out and say, I don't want to do business with someone like that. Years past, the only way that we would have known about this would be the news media. And let's face it, the news media has a certain way of making certain twists on stories and how much they don't cover the stories. So this is the part of social media and the internet and a lot of things that I like, because there's really no hiding when something like this happens. And as a consumer, I always say, as a consumer, make your vote with your dollars. And what I mean by that, with a company, if you don't like what a company's doing, and if you think they're fraudulent or they're doing something illegal or they're doing something unethical, here's the good news. You could submit a complaint, but the best way that you could get your message across is quit doing business with that company. I don't care if it's a service company, a product company, what industry it is. The best way as a consumer that we could send a message saying we don't like what you're doing is quit doing business with them. Because what hits everybody the hardest in business is revenue and money and profitability. And if you drive down revenues, or you help drive down revenues, or affect their bottom line, unfortunately that's the only way that they are going to get the message. As I wrap this first story up, don't get me wrong, I am a free enterprise person. I love capitalism. I love the fact that anybody could start a business, grow a business, be extremely successful. However, I'm also a big fan of doing what's right and doing what's responsible and running an ethical business and treating people the way they're supposed to be treated. And in this case, Wells Fargo didn't, and now they have another situation that is coming to them. We'll see. Over the next couple of months, I'll continue to report and give everybody an idea and update what's going on, the latest with Wells Fargo. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to talk more about the CFPB, that is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, fines Prospect Mortgage and others for some fraudulent activities in the mortgage industry. I'll be back in just a minute.
For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com.
Hi, this is Joe Kuchera, host of Real Estate Radio Live and Bay Area Mortgage Planner. In addition to being your home financing expert, please remember you could always contact me for other trusted advisors such as realtors, financial planners, and CPAs. Please feel free to contact me at 408-838-9060. That's 408-838-9060, or email joe at reradiolive.com, or visit my website at reradiolive.com for more details.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, the podcast series. As we continue through our week on Thursday here, I had the first segment talking about Wells Fargo and some of the troubles, the problems that they are continuing to have related to the pipeline in Dakotas. And covered that, gave everybody kind of an update. Now, the second part of the show here, I'm going to talk a little about a few things of some more companies getting into trouble. And the reason I report on these is really the basic that if you haven't been following the show for the last 7 years, our focus, our objective, our commitment to you, the consumer, is to provide you with education information in and around the real estate industry. So there's a lot involved there, And just like we'll tell all the success stories of the great markets and the real estate agents and the loan officers and all the great stuff that goes on the real estate side, we have all kinds of stories and success stories to promote. We also have to be responsible and cover the stuff that goes on in our industry that is not so attractive and is not so good, and it is a ugly part of it that needs to be brought out to the public's attention. So recently, the CFPB orders Prospect Mortgage to pay $3.5 million in fines for illegal kickback scheme. And I'll get into more details of that. Let me go through first. So the CFPB was created by Dodd-Frank several years ago, part of the mortgage, really the mortgage rehab, I would call it. that came under scrutiny. They created a new division of the government called the CFPB, and that stands for Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So they oversee credit cards, mortgage financing, personal loans, they oversee that financial area. And so they are the watchdogs that will go out and do audits of all the companies and make sure we are conducting ourselves. I say we because I am, with New American Funding, one of the largest mortgage bankers in the United States, and we also fall under that umbrella of being overseen by the CFPB. So just to give everybody a flavor of kind of where this sets, is they are the watchdog. They come in, they do audits of companies, they reply and respond to complaints and things that happen within our industry. So recently they fined Prospect Mortgage, who is a large mortgage banker. Most of you may have heard them in the Bay Area. They're pretty prevalent in the Bay Area. $3.5 million for illegal kickbacks for mortgage business referrals. What does this mean? What this means basically is, in our industry, one of the things that has been going on for years, and the CFPB and all other regulatory agencies have tried to stop, but it's still going on. It's just not going on at the level and the blatant level it has for years past. I'll give you an example. Someone in the mortgage industry, my industry, someone like me, might say, this is a couple of examples, might say, I'll tell you what, Jim, I'm doing a loan for you right now. Do you know anybody else that might need a refinance or a purchase? And Jim says, yeah, I think I probably do. And I say, guess what, Jim? If you refer one of your friends, families, or coworkers to me, I will give you $1,000 for every time you refer someone to me. That is illegal. That's illegal. Just so we're clear. Okay, when I close a loan with someone, if I want to send them a $20 gift or a Starbucks card or a cake or flowers or something like that, that's fine. Something's within reason. You're saying thank you for your business. Okay. The other part of this is, if I am in relationship with real estate agents, for example, and I go to a real estate agent and I say, hey, listen, Frank, if you give me that purchase, or each time you refer me a client that's working with you on a purchase, I'll give you $1,000 when that loan closes. That's illegal. These are called kickbacks, referral fees. You can look at them any way you want. In other industries, they might be legal. In our industry, they are illegal. So there's going to be some people in my industry that are going to frown at a show like this that I'm doing, because I'm basically taking the covers off a lot of stuff that goes on here. So the biggest offender of this practice is in-house lending. So you have literally every single major real estate company, Coldwell Banker, Intero Real Estate Services. You have also Alam Panel in our area, the Sereno Group, and there's several more. All the major real estate companies have what's called in-house lending relationships. You might ask, what is this? So what this is they try to circumvent the system, and they will form a joint venture. And the real estate company might say, okay, ABC Mortgage, we're going to form a joint venture, and it's going to become, 101 Real Estate Company. That real estate joint venture then pays revenue for sharing business. So, for instance, if you walk inside a real estate office, whether it be Coldwell Banker, Intero Real Estate Services, Keller Williams, the Sereno Group, all the ones in our area, if you walk in there, you're going to see potentially people that work on the lending side. It's going to be called a different company. The company's not going to be Keller Williams Lending Service or Coldwell Banker Lending Service. It's going to be a separate company because they've formed a joint venture. So by the real estate company encouraging, I call it steering people to use their in-house lender, here's what happens. They're going to encourage them to use the in-house lender. Why? Because they get compensated for it. Yes, Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, Elan Pinnell, Sereno Group, all of them get compensated for referring business to in-house lenders. Well, let me tell you the dirty secret that's the truth. Those should be separated, in my opinion. People benefit from those, great, but guess who benefits from in-house lending? The real estate company and the lending company, separately. Let me tell you how this works, and I could argue this case with anybody. In order for an in-house lending company to operate and make sense for them to be in-house with a real estate company, the real estate company has to share revenue. In order to share revenue, there's got to be enough revenue to go around. So let me tell you what happens when a person is referred, for the most part, almost always, to an in-house lender. I could guarantee you that the in-house lender's rates and fees are going to be higher than the average market or competition out there. And here's the reason why. They have to increase their interest rate to cover the margin and to pay everybody and make some money. So let me repeat this. Here's what happens. Typically, I'm not saying it happens across the board, but overall, as a rule, in-house lending companies have to increase their interest rates or their fees that they charge to you, the consumer. So you're typically going to be paying a higher rate or higher fees because that's how everybody makes money in that transaction. See, if I'm not paying kickbacks as a lending company, then I don't have additional revenue to dish out, and then I could pass that on to the consumer or my own overhead and expenses. Dodd-Frank did away with people charging a higher rate and making more money. You can't do that anymore. That's great. But here's what you can do as an in-house lender. You could increase your interest rate so that you get more revenue on the back end, which means you could pay partners and joint ventures a bit of that, which to me is a kickback. So these are what's called legal kickbacks because they circumvent or get around it. Now, some in our industry may not like to hear this, or they'll get upset that I'm talking about this, but this is the reality. This is what happens. And in my opinion, it needs to change. Any benefit that is passed on should be passed on to the consumer. Again, I am a free enterprise person. I'm a capitalist. I love business. I love to start. I like the idea. I like to make money. Don't get me wrong. All those things. But I don't like it when companies try to increase their margins by A, charging a consumer more for no reason, or B, they have something going on behind the scenes that is not really ethical. And the bottom line is the consumer ends up paying a higher price. So the reason why commissions and real estate fees and mortgage fees and interest rates are higher now than they ever have been is because of this. So you would think with all this regulation there should be less of this, but there isn't. Now, I shouldn't say. There's not every single real estate company has an in-house lender. Let me just be clear of that. Not every single real estate company operates this way. Not every single, you have to be careful because there could be hundreds of offices like of Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, and some of them don't have in-house lenders and some do. So I want to be very careful about this. Not every single real estate company has an in-house lender of this relationship. Many do. Many do, though. I would say 70, 80% of them do. And I could tell you, and I'm in this industry, it's flat out wrong. That should be divvied up because any kind of additional revenue, great. If you could find a way to, here's my pitch on revenue. If you want more revenue, go out and get more business. Or figure out how to lower your overhead and run a smarter business. That's what you should do. Don't do it on the back of someone else. Don't do it on the back of the consumer. If you want to generate more revenue, go out and get more business and figure out how to run a smarter business with less overhead so you can increase your margins. That's, in my opinion, the way you should run a business. All right, we're running out of time. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at reradiolive.com.